Ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to offer a mea culpa. 4 years ago, I stood on this stage and offered a very controversial opinion that Edmonton's official dish was, ironically, the Halifax donair. And with good reason. There are almost 80 restaurants in Edmonton that have donair just in the name, and you could see them here on this map. And that there are much more that are served. More restaurants that are serving donair, and that's more than any place in Halifax or anywhere else in Canada. Now, Halifax did not take kindly to this, and they tabled a motion to make donairs their city's official food by law. And this is an actual document from the city of Halifax, and you can see the reason Edmontonians wanted to designate it as their official food, and that's pretty much me. So don't let anyone tell you you can't change the world. The bill passed in a very tight 8-7 vote. And since then, Haligonians have jealously protected this designation by ratcheting up the cult of donair. They've created a donair pub crawl, donair video games, a 24-hour donair webcam. There are donair-themed scratch-and-win tickets, and yes, one Haligonian even manufactures a donair Christmas ornament. It spins with a tiny little motor. My fellow citizens, I'm afraid there are no number of donairs that we can consume in this great city of ours to top this zealotry, so I concede it's not our official food. No, it's Canada's. Now, hear me out. The dish is more than just a regional sensation. Like the butter tart, it has its origins in a specific part of the country, but it's come to symbolize more than Ontario's questionable and perverse love of raisins. Inside this mystery meat behind me is Canada's multicultural heart and soul. Don't worry, I am only talking metaphorically. To really appreciate the uniqueness of Canada's greatest cuisine, you must understand the rotating kebab's complicated history, how it evolved across the world's continents before it took form as a spicy meat bomb wrapped up with a creamy sweet sauce and a tender pita, and I'm getting kind of aroused just thinking about it. Despite what a lot of people think, it's not Lebanese. Our journey actually starts here in Turkey, where for centuries people have been cooking kebabs horizontally like suckers. And there's much diversity to these kebabs, which means rotating meats, but they're not conducive to feeding scores of people. And then comes this guy, Mehmet Iskender Efendi, the Steve Jobs of kebabs. And this isn't actually him, but let's pretend, and also that sword kind of looks familiar. In 1867, the story goes, Iskender turned a lamb meatloaf 90 degrees vertically, and he added a crank, and thus he changed the planet. See, by tilting it upwards, it sweats, and it becomes self-basting, and the dripping fat becomes fuel for the flames that singe the meat's outer layer to perfection. Iskender's kebab remains a plated dish in Turkey, but over the next 150 years, this genius spreads by various immigrant groups, all hoping to thrive in their new countries by offering an exotic taste of the Mediterranean. Now, there are now 48 variations of the Iskender kebab in places as varied as Vietnam and Azerbaijan, but let's focus on 5 relevant species: the donar, the shawarma, the gyro, tacos al pastor, and of course the Halifax donair. For those of you still wondering what the differences are, let me explain. The donair is often confused with the Greek gyro, but this sandwich is only the inspiration. In fact, the bread is different, the sauce is a savory tzatziki, and the meat is lamb or pork and milder in taste. And what's interesting, too, is that people think it's Greek, but it was actually the Armenian refugees from the Ottoman Empire who were persecuted who invented the Greek gyro. Now, around that same time, Levantine Arabs under Ottoman rule also started reproducing the Turkish dish to their own taste. So think pickled veggies, marinated beef and chicken, loads of tahini and garlic, a shawarma. Now, it's safe to say that shawarma is the most popular kebab in the world, offered everywhere on every continent except for Antarctica. Now, the shawarma evolves again in the New World as the tacos al pastor. A mass of Lebanese immigrants in Latin America adapt the kebab to Christian tastes. They make it a pork kebab that's crowned with a special native plant. What else? The pineapple. Crossover episode. All right. Meanwhile, across the pond, the original Iskender donair kebab travels with Turkish immigrants to Western Europe, and white people finally get behind it, so long as they're drunk. Now, you can argue that the donair's nightlife culture actually begins in Berlin with this guy in the picture behind me, the late Kadir Nerman, and he's credited with inventing Germany's 3.5 billion euro kebab industry. So there's a kebab revolution in Latin America and in Europe in the 1960s, but all's quiet on the North American front until a Chicago engineer finds a way to mass produce Euro cones. And if you've traveled in the northeastern US cities, you've seen these posters hanging in windows for decades. Now, seeing its popularity in the US, a Greek immigrant in Bedford, Nova Scotia tries to replicate the Euro at his pizzeria in 1973, Peter Gamoulakis. He's the godfather of Canada's donair, and he tried to introduce the Greek Euro to Maritimers, but they rejected it. So he had to modify it. Savory lamb becomes spicy beef, and of course, it really comes down to this, the sweet sauce. It's his secret sauce, though it's not a secret anymore. It's vinegar, garlic, condensed milk, and you can make it in minutes. And as for the name, by the way, he just says that he mispronounced the Turkish label on the roaster. Dunar becomes donair. But back to that sweet sauce. Because the Lebanese figured out that you can make it in minutes, and they ripped it off by the hundreds and started to claim it as their own. Now, it's not a coincidence that in cities that have the largest Lebanese populations, you also have the largest donair offerings. But their contribution is more than just entrepreneurship, for it is their pita that makes it so consumable when you can barely open your eyes. So there you have it. The donair is derived from no fewer than 5 ethnic cuisines. Lebanese bread cradling kebab slices adapted from Greek, Turkish, German, and American recipes, slathered in a white sauce that is Canadian's maple syrup and nearly twice as sweet. So I ask you, is there a food that better encapsulates our multiculturalism with the mixing of distant practices to create new traditions? Because I've had donairs all over the world. In Berlin, in Beirut, in Mexico, and I've not had one as good as this one that I got from a random donair shop off Jasper Avenue. And so please join me in saluting Canada's official cuisine.